Welcome back, and welcome to the final lesson in the Mechina program. This lesson we have a few new keywords, in this section especially. The first keywords are items that we use to celebrate Shabbat and holidays. The first begins with the new letter Nun, and that is Ner. Ner shel Shabbat, Ner shel Chanukah, Ner shel Yom Tov. That beautiful little candle. And it begins with the new letter Nun. Now, Nun is one of 5 letters in the Hebrew alphabet that has a final form. And the second keyword this lesson, Yayin, it ends with the final Nun. So now that you can read all of this, practice reading these 2 words. The third keyword in this lesson is shofar, which is a special kind of horn, a horn that is used now primarily to signal the beginning of the Jewish year. It's associated with Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. It's first blasted on Rosh Chodesh Elul to announce that the year is coming a month in advance. In ancient times, it was a battle horn. It was used to signal troops on the battlefield. And also we know that special occasions like the Jubilee year, which was the special year that occurred every 50 years, it was announced with a blast of the shofar. The shofar can be made from the horn of any kosher animal. The one pictured here happens to be a ram's horn, but they can also be made from antelope horns, which give them a different look, but it's still the same word and they still produce very similar sounds. So speaking of sounds, the second syllable in shofar begins with the new letter for this lesson, and that is the Fe, which is actually a soft pronunciation of the letter Pe. Pe with the dagesh inside of it makes an explosive little puff of air when you say it, Puh. But without the dagesh, it makes a much softer, flowing sound of air, shofar. The fourth key word is the name of the very first letter in the alphabet, and of course that would be Aleph, and Aleph ends with the Fe, the final version of that letter. You've now had all 5 finals, and while Hebrew has no capital letters, 5 letters do have final forms, and you've now learned all of them. 4 of the 5 share an interesting common feature. The final form is a long downstroke that ends with the hand being pulled below the line of print. So if you look at it, the final chaf looks like the chaf is bent. That bottom piece is bent. The same is true with nun and final nun, with fe and final fe, with tzadi and final tzadi. So people often ask why Hebrew added final forms instead of capitals. But scholars have actually discovered that the final versions, the ones with the long downstrokes, were the original forms of the letters. And it was actually the non-final forms that developed during the Hasmonean period, during the time of the Maccabees. It developed to facilitate writing by keeping the hand within the line of print while it was working on a single word, and using only the long downstroke at the end of the word before you had to move the hand anyway to start the next word. The only final letters that don't follow this pattern, of course, are mem and final mem. And we simply don't know exactly why those developed. As a rule, as you have learned from the very beginning of the Mechina program, Hebrew vowels always follow the consonant. The ah in chala follows first the cha, and then the lamed, la, cha, la. There is, however, one exception to this rule, and that happens at the end of a word when the final letter in the word is either a chet or an ayin, and it is followed by the ah vowel. In that particular instance, the vowel is read first and the consonant is read second. So we have sameach and shome'ah. The vowel comes before the consonant in that particular case. And the key word for this rule is Chag Sameach, what we wish each other as a greeting on all of the holidays. Rosh Hashanah, Purim, Sukkot, Simchat Torah, Pesach, and so on and so forth. Chag means holiday in modern Hebrew, and Sameach is happy. So Chag Sameach is wishing you a happy holiday. There's another special reading rule that we come across in this particular lesson, and they're both the first special rule and this one are because these are relatively rare occurrences. The first reading rule you'll encounter more often. The second one is really quite rare. So, just a review, Hebrew syllables begin with consonants. They always begin with consonants. Some symbols stand for two sounds at once. So if you look with the new keyword is mitzvot. Mitzvot, you may remember mitzvah is a commandment. Mitzvot is the plural of mitzvah. So mitzvot, and of course there are 613 of them in the Torah. You'll note that the vav with the dot is actually being both a consonant and the vowel. The vav is the consonant v, and the dot represents the long O sound. This is a kind of double duty special dot, but when people see it, they'll often read mitzot, but that's not correct because every Hebrew syllable, as I said, has to start with a consonant. So you can tell, one of the keys in all of this, that you can tell that that's going to be vo instead of just o, is that underneath the tzadi is a shva. And when you have a shvanach in the syllable before that vo, you'll recognize that that's closing the first syllable or closing the prior syllable, and therefore the next one must begin, as I said, with the consonant, and so that vav has to be a v. So again, we have the word mitzvot. You'll practice reading this now. You'll have a lot of practice with it in the reading material that follows. So, you've now learned all 26 consonant letter symbols and the symbols for 7 vowel sounds and both uses of the syllable marker. So that's really quite a lot. You are now ready for the first 4 pages in this lesson's reading material, and you are almost done learning all of the ins and outs of Hebrew phonics and Hebrew decoding or phonetic reading. So go to it with the reading materials, and when you're done with those, move on to the written assignment and then contact your tutor. And I wish you Bahatzlacha.